David had never expected to find something like this. As a soldier, he had been through many battles, survived countless missions, and faced dangers most people would never dream of. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found on that distant, forgotten planet. The sun was setting as David and his team walked through the wreckage of what seemed to be an old research station. The air was thick with dust and the quiet was almost too heavy. They had been sent to investigate an emergency signal that had come from the abandoned outposts, but there was no sign of life. Just crumpled walls, broken machinery, and empty corridors. At first, David thought it was a trap. The galaxy was full of those hidden enemies waiting for the right moment to strike. But as he made his way down one of the hallways, his foot caught on something small. He looked down, expecting more debris, but instead he saw a child. She was lying there, alone and motionless. At first, David thought she was just another victim of whatever had happened to the station, but then he saw her face. She wasn't human. Her skin had a soft, pale green hue, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Her small body was curled up, trembling. David's heart skipped a beat. He had never seen an alien like this before. Her features were delicate, almost childlike, yet there was something powerful about her. She looked fragile, but David knew better than to underestimate anyone or anything in the galaxy. The team gathered around her, unsure of what to do. They checked for signs of life, and to their relief, she was breathing. David knelt down beside her, gently lifting her in his arms. She was light, almost weightless. As he looked into her eyes, he could see the fear and confusion in them. "Hey there," David said softly, though he knew she couldn't understand him. "You're safe now?" The child didn't respond. She just stared up at him, her large eyes filled with questions. David didn't know who she was or how she had ended up here, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her alone. "Let's get her back to the ship." He ordered his team. They carefully carried her back to their transport, where they wrapped her in blankets and tried to comfort her. The journey back to their home base was long, but David stayed by her side the entire time, watching over her. She didn't speak or make any sound, but she never looked away from him. Her eyes filled with curiosity. When they finally returned to their base, David insisted on taking care of her. He knew there was no way she could survive alone, and he couldn't bring himself to hand her over to someone else. She needed someone to care for her, and David felt that responsibility fall squarely on his shoulders. Over the next few days, David learned more about her. She didn't have a name, at least not one she could communicate. But as he spent more time with her, he began to see the signs of intelligence in her, her ability to understand simple actions, her curiosity about the world around her, and the way she mimicked his movements. David decided to call her Lyra, a name that felt right to him, though he wasn't sure why. The name seemed to suit her delicate features and the soft glow of her eyes, as the days turned into weeks. David continued to care for Lyra. He gave her food, taught her the basics of human language, and helped her adjust to life on Earth. She was like a sponge, soaking up everything around her. Her bright eyes always watching, always learning. Despite her alien origins, Lyra was a fast learner. She quickly picked up on simple words, her first word being David, spoken softly one day as she reached for his hand. It brought a smile to David's face. She wasn't just a lost child anymore. She was becoming part of his life. Over time, David found himself growing attached to her. Lyra wasn't just an alien child to him. She was a daughter, someone he would protect at all costs. The more he got to know her, the more he realized that raising her was a challenge he was willing to take on. She was different, but in many ways they weren't so different after all. But even as they formed a bond, David couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lyra's story. How had she ended up alone on that distant planet? Who had sent her there, and why? And why had she been abandoned? David knew that answers might come one day, but for now, he focused on the present. Lyra needed him, and he would be there for her no matter what. He didn't know what the future held, but as long as they were together, he was ready to face it. Lyra had no family here, but David would be the one to give her a home. And as the days passed, David couldn't help but wonder if this little alien child was the start of something much bigger than either of them could ever imagine. The weeks turned into months, and David found that his life had changed in ways he hadn't expected. Lyra, the alien child he had found all those months ago, had become more than just a responsibility. She had become his family at first. It had been hard. There were many moments when David didn't know what to do. Lyra's alien nature meant that many things were completely new to her: food, language, the way humans lived. But as time passed, she grew stronger, both in body and mind. Her curious eyes followed him around, learning everything she could. She watched how he did things, copied his actions, and even began to understand simple words and commands. David couldn't help but feel proud of her. She was growing up fast, and every day he saw more of her intelligence and determination. Lyra wasn't just a helpless child. She was strong, smart, and capable of more than anyone might expect from an alien. One evening, as David was cleaning the dishes after dinner, Lyra tugged on his sleeve, turned around and saw her holding a small toy in her hands, a wooden figure of a soldier he had given her months ago. "David," she said in her soft, clear voice. It was the first time she had spoken to him without mimicking him. Her voice was calm, almost as if she were trying to explain something. "Yes, Lyra?" David asked, his heart warming at the sound of her voice. Lyra held the toy up and smiled at him. "Soldier." David chuckled and knelt down beside her. "That's right. I gave that to you. Do you like it?" She nodded, then added soldier. "Protect." Her words were simple, but the meaning behind them was clear. She was starting to understand the idea of protection, of safety, of family. David's heart softened. He had always believed that he was the one protecting her. But in that moment, he realized that Lyra, in her own way, is protecting him too. They had become a team, two beings from different worlds bound by an unbreakable connection. Over the next few months, their bond deepened. David introduced Lyra to Earth's culture. Everything from music to food to history. He wanted her to experience everything, to know about the world she had been brought into. Lyra loved the simple things: the taste of fresh fruit, sound of birds singing, the feel of soft grass beneath her feet. But there were moments, quiet moments late at night, when David would catch Lyra looking out the window, staring at the stars. He knew she missed something. Even though she was happy and healthy, there was a part of her that longed for something more. She would never say it, but David could see it in her eyes. He didn't know where she came from, or what her people were like, but he knew one thing. Lyra wasn't just any alien. She was special. The things she could do, the way she seemed to understand complex ideas at such a young age, made David think there was something more to her story than just an abandoned child. One afternoon, as David was working on his ship, Lyra approached him with a strange look on her face. She had been quiet for the past few days, lost in thought. But today, she seemed different. Her eyes were wide with curiosity, as if she had just discovered something important. "David," she said again, her voice more serious than before. David stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. "Home," he repeated, not sure what she meant. Lyra nodded. "Home," she said again, pointing to the sky, her finger tracing the stars above them. "Mother?" David's heart skipped a beat. The word mother was not something she had used often. And when she did, it was always in a soft, uncertain way, as if she didn't quite understand the concept. But now, she was saying it with purpose. It was as if she knew something he didn't. Something was calling to her, drawing her back to a place he couldn't understand. "Do you want to find her?" David asked gently, though he already knew the answer. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sadness. She didn't answer right away, but after a long pause, she simply nodded. "Want to know?" David sighed. He had always known this day would come. Lyra had been raised by him, and they had made a life together on Earth. But now, the pull of her past was stronger than ever, and David could see that it wasn't something he could keep her from. She needed to know who she truly was. "We'll find her," David promised, though his heart was heavy with the thought of losing Lyra to someone else. He had raised her, loved her, and given her a home. But now, her true family, her origins, were calling her. The next day, David set off on a journey to uncover the truth. He had no idea what to expect or where to begin, but one thing was certain: he would not let anything happen to Lyra. She was his daughter. No matter where she came from, he would protect her with everything he had. And so, their adventure began, a journey not just across the stars, but into the unknown mysteries of Lyra's past. Little did David know, the answers they sought would change everything. David and Lyra's journey was just beginning. They had left the small, quiet life they had built on Earth and set off into the stars. ID wasn't sure where they were going or what they would find, but he knew that Lyra needed answers, and he would do whatever it took to help her get them. The ship was small but reliable. David had made sure it was well equipped for their travels, and Lyra had taken to it quickly, her wide eyes shining with curiosity. They had traveled across many different planets, and Lyra had grown more and more fascinated by each new place they visited. Yet no matter how many worlds they explored, something was always missing Lyra's true origins. They followed every lead they could find, but none of them brought them closer to finding out where Lyra came from or who her real mother was. It was as though her past had been wiped clean, hidden away somewhere beyond reach. One day, as they passed through a quiet sector of space, the ship's communication system beeped. David sat up straight, surprised. They hadn't received many messages since they left Earth, and most of those had been standard check-ins. But this message was different. It was a signal, weak and distorted, but it was unmistakable. "David," Lyra said, her voice soft but full of anticipation. She had been sitting by the window, watching the stars drift by, but now she turned to him with a serious look on her face. "That's my mother." David froze. His hands tightened on the controls of the ship as the reality of Lyra's words hit him. Could it really be her mother? After all their searching, could they have finally found her? He quickly worked to clear the static, adjusting the ship's communication system to focus on the weak signal. The message became clearer, and David heard a voice, strong and commanding. It was an alien voice, one that David didn't recognize. But there was something about it, something familiar in the way it carried power and authority. "To the lost. Child Lyra," the voice said, sending a chill through David's bones. "I am your mother, Queen Arana, of the Tazari Empire. I have been searching for you, and I know you have been searching for me. I will come for you, my daughter. I will come for both of you." David felt a rush of emotions. Shock, fear, and something else, a deep sense of protectiveness. He turned to Lyra, whose face was a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Are you sure?" David asked quietly, his voice full of concern. "Is it really her?" Lyra nodded, her eyes wide. "I think so, David. That's my mother. I remember her voice. I remember hearing it in my dreams." David didn't know what to think. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment that would answer all their questions. But now that it was here, he wasn't sure how to feel. He had raised Lyra, cared for her, loved her. But now her true family had come for her. What did that mean for them? For him? He had always known that Lyra's past was something he couldn't fully understand. She was different, and deep down, David had known that one day she would need to reconnect with the people she came from. But this was more than just a reunion. It was a return to something much bigger than their life together. "We need to go meet her," Lyra said, her voice calm but determined. "I have to know more. I need to understand why I was sent to Earth, why I was left behind. And I need to know if I belong with her." David sighed. He knew this day was coming, but it didn't make it any easier. Lyra had always been a part of his life, and he had never questioned that. Now, with her mother's arrival, everything was changing. "You're right," David said finally. "We'll go together. But Lyra, whatever happens, you need to know that you will always have a home here with me, no matter where you come from. You are my daughter. That will never change." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I know, David. I know. I'll never forget you. But I need to find out who I really am." David nodded, though he didn't fully understand the emotions that were swirling inside him. He had raised Lyra, and they had built something together. But now he had to let go in a way he never imagined. The ship's systems beeped again, pulling David from his thoughts. The signal was growing stronger, and the voice from the other end of the line was becoming clearer. David's hand moved to the controls, preparing to make their final jump to wherever Queen Arana was waiting for them. As the ship's engines hummed to life, David looked over at Lyra. She was sitting quietly, her hands resting on her lap. But there was a look of both excitement and fear in her eyes. "You ready for this?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. Lyra smiled softly. "I don't know what will happen, but I'm ready to find the truth." David gave her a reassuring smile. Didn't know what the future held for them, but he knew one thing for sure. No matter where they went, no matter what Lyra discovered about her past, they would face it together. As the ship flew toward their destination, David couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss, but also a strange sense of hope. Lyra's journey had only just begun, and he was ready to see where it would lead. The journey to meet Queen Arana was long and filled with uncertainty. As David piloted the ship, he couldn't help but glance over at Lyra every so often. She had been quiet ever since they received the message. Her excitement had been replaced by a look of deep thought, as though she was preparing for something much bigger than she could fully understand. Lyra had always been curious, always eager to learn, but now there was a new kind of seriousness in her eyes. David could see the weight of the moment settling on her. She was about to meet the mother she had never known, the one who had sent her away to Earth all those years ago. David knew that this moment would change everything. Lyra had been his daughter for so long, and he had protected her with all his heart. But now it seemed that her true family was calling her back. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him wanted to keep her with him, to protect her from whatever was out there, but another part of him knew that this was her path. This was something she had to do. "David," Lyra said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but there was a hint of fear in it. "What if my mother doesn't want me? What if I don't belong with her?" David felt a sharp pang. In his chest, he turned to look at her, his heart heavy. He could see the fear in her eyes. It wasn't just about meeting her mother. It was about what might happen after. She had lived with David for so long, and the thought of being taken away, of losing the only family she had ever known, was terrifying. "You belong with me," David said gently, his voice full of warmth. "No matter what happens, Lyra, you are my daughter. That won't change." Lyra nodded, though her uncertainty remained. She turned her gaze to the stars outside the window. "I just don't know what to expect. I don't know if I'll be able to fit in with her, with them." David understood her fear. Lyra was not just an alien. She was someone who had been raised by humans, someone who had learned everything from him. Now, her true people were waiting for her.
8.
And she didn't know if she would be able to connect with them in the same way. They continued their journey. In silence, the only sounds, the hum of the ship's engines, and the occasional beep of the control panel. David kept his eyes on the path ahead, his mind racing with questions. What kind of ruler was Queen Arana? What did she want with Lyra? And what would happen when Lyra met her? After what felt like hours, the ship finally entered the atmosphere of a distant foreign planet. The planet was beautiful, a sprawling landscape of lush forests and tall mountains, with shimmering lakes that sparkled under the light of a distant sun. It was peaceful, serene, yet David couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than either of them could imagine. David guided the ship down toward a landing pad where a group of alien beings stood waiting. Were tall and regal, their skin a deep shade of blue with elegant glowing markings running down their arms and faces. They stood with an air of authority, their eyes fixed on the approaching ship. At the front of the group stood a woman who looked different from the others. She was older, her presence commanding, and her eyes held a sense of power that made David's heart race. "That must be her," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. David nodded, his hand gripping the controls as the ship touched down. His heart was pounding, unsure of what to expect next. But as the ship came to a full stop, he turned to Lyra, offering her a reassuring smile. "Ready?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Lyra nodded, though she still looked uncertain. She stood up slowly, her eyes locked on the woman ahead. The air seemed to thicken as the door of the ship opened. The two of them stepped out into the unknown. Queen Arana stepped forward, her regal presence overwhelming. She was taller than David had imagined, her dark blue skin shimmering in the light. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes were a glowing, bright violet. There was no mistaking who she was. This was Lyra's mother, as the queen approached. Her eyes softened when they met Lyra's. She knelt down slowly, her hands reaching out to touch Lyra's face gently. Lyra stepped back, her fear clear, but the queen didn't seem offended. She simply smiled. "My daughter," Queen Arana said, her voice filled with emotion. "I've waited so long for this moment." Lyra looked up at her mother, her heart racing. You're my mother?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Queen Arana nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Yes, my dear, I am your mother. Never wanted to leave you, but I had no choice. The war, the danger writ, was too much. I sent you away to keep you safe, and now, here you are. We are finally together again." Lyra's eyes filled with tears as well. She stepped forward tentatively, as though unsure of what to do. But before she could speak, Queen Arana opened her arms, offering a warm embrace. Lyra hesitated for a moment before stepping into her arms, and for the first time, she felt the connection she had longed for. Mother's touch was familiar, comforting, and yet strange. She had spent so long alone with David as her only family, that the reality of having someone else was overwhelming. David watched from a distance, his heart heavy. He knew this moment had to happen. Lyra needed to know her true family. But as he watched her in her mother's arms, he felt a deep sadness. She wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was the lost child of a queen, someone destined for greatness. The future was uncertain, and David knew that he would have to let go in some ways. But no matter what happened, he would always be there. For Lyra, after all, he was the one who had raised her, loved her, protected her when no one else could. As the two embraced, David turned his gaze toward the horizon, wondering what the future held. He had no idea what was next, but one thing was certain: he would never forget the girl he raised, the girl who had been his daughter, and who, no matter what, always would be. The reunion between Lyra and her mother, Queen Arana, was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Lyra had always wondered who she truly was, where she came from, and why she had been sent to Earth. Now, standing in the queen's arms, I had answers that filled her with a mix of emotions. David watched quietly from the side, his heart heavy. He had raised Lyra, given her a home, taught her everything she knew. And now, as her real mother held her close, he couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. Lyra was no longer just his daughter. She was the princess of an entire alien empire. For years, it had been just the two of them, David and Lyra, against the world. He had been her protector, her teacher, and her family. Now someone else was taking his place, and David wasn't sure how to feel about it. But as much as he feared losing Lyra, he knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for. It was time for her to discover who she truly was. Lyra pulled away from Queen Arana after a long moment. Her mother's embrace had felt both familiar and strange, as though a part of her knew this would happen, but wasn't prepared for the reality. She looked at Queen Arana, her eyes full of wonder and uncertainty. "I never thought I'd find you," Lyra said softly, her voice trembling. "I never imagined you were ... so important." Queen Arana smiled warmly. "You are important, my daughter. You always have been. And now that we are together, we can rebuild everything we lost. The Taisari Empire has been waiting for you for your return. You have a place here, a purpose." Lyra's gaze shifted to David, standing a few steps away. She had always felt like an outsider in the world of humans, always knowing there was something different about her. But now she was torn. Queen Arana was her mother, the one who had sent her away to protect her. But David was the one who had raised her, who had been there for her since the very beginning. He had been her father, her protector, and her guide. "David," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do I do now?" David stepped forward, his heart heavy with emotion. He had always known that this day might come, but that didn't make it any easier. "Lyra," he said, his voice steady but filled with tenderness, "you need to decide. What's best for you? I'll always be here for you. You'll always be my daughter. But you have the chance to go back, to learn who you really are. Your mother is here, and she has waited so long for you. This is your chance to see what your future can be. Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes filled with uncertainty. She was unsure of what to do. She had always felt connected to David, the man who had cared for her and raised her. But now she was faced with the reality of her true heritage, a heritage that she had never known. Her mother, the queen of a powerful empire, was offering her a place in a world she had never known. But Lyra wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Queen Arana watched them both closely, her eyes filled with understanding. I know this is difficult, Lyra. You have been raised among humans, and they have given you love and protection. But you have a destiny. Your people need you. I need you. The Empire needs you. David looked at Lyra, his heart aching. He knew that she had to make her own choice. She couldn't stay with him forever, as much as he wanted her to. Path to follow now, and as much as it hurt, David knew that he had to let her go. She wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was a princess, a powerful being in her own right. Lyra turned to face her mother. She could see the hope in Queen Arana's eyes, the longing for her to return and take her place as a leader of the Taisari Empire. But in her heart, Lyra knew that she wasn't ready to leave the life she had built with David. She wasn't ready to let go of the family they had formed, the bond they shared. I'm not sure I can leave, Lyra said, her voice quiet. I've spent my whole life with David. He's the only family I've ever known. Queen Arana's expression softened. I understand, my daughter. You have been through much, and I know it will be hard to leave the life you've built. But I will not force you. The choice is yours. If you choose to stay with David, I will respect that. But know that the Empire is waiting for you, and I will always be here, ready to welcome you home. David stepped forward, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. Lyra, he said gently, you don't have to decide now. Whatever you choose, I will support you. If you want to stay here with me, we'll find a way. But if you want to go with your mother, I won't stand in your way. You deserve to know who you are. Lyra looked at David, her heart filled with love for him. She had always known that he would never force her to choose between them, and that made the decision even harder. She had never imagined that her life would be filled with so many choices, so many paths to follow. Finally, Lyra took a deep breath. I need time to think, she said quietly. I need to understand what it means to be part of the Taisari Empire, what it means to be a princess. But I also need to understand what it means to be part of this family. Queen Arana nodded, understanding the weight of Lyra's decision. Take all the time you need, my daughter. You will be here when. You're ready? David smiled gently. I'll be here too. As they stood there, the future stretched out before them, full of uncertainty and possibility. Lyra didn't know what her next steps would be, but she knew one thing for sure. Whatever choice she made, she wouldn't have to make it alone. Lyra stood on the balcony, staring out at the vast landscape that stretched before her. The alien city was unlike anything she had ever seen, a beautiful mix of natural landscapes and advanced technology. Towers made of shimmering materials rose from the ground, their lights glowing softly as they reflected the twin moons above. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, but there was also a sense of peacefulness, as though everything in the city was in perfect harmony. But no matter how beautiful the city was, Lyra's mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about the decision she had to make, the choice that would change her life forever. Should she stay with David, the only father she had ever known? Or should she go with Queen Arana and take her place as the princess of the Taisari Empire? Lyra had spent most of her life on Earth, growing up with David. He had shown her love, taught her everything she knew, and protected her when no one else could. But now, everything was different. She had met her real mother, the queen of an empire, and she was being asked to step into a role she hadn't prepared for. Her heart was torn between the family she had always known and the unknown path that lay ahead. Lyra. The soft voice of Queen Arana interrupted her thoughts. Lyra turned to see her mother standing behind her, her regal figure illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights. Yes, mother, Lyra said, her voice quiet but steady. Arana stepped closer, her eyes filled with understanding. She could sense the confusion and fear within her daughter. She knew this decision wasn't easy for Lyra. I know this is hard for you, but you must understand that our people need you, are the future of the Taisari Empire, your presence. Here will bring us strength, unity, and hope. We have waited so long for you to return. Lyra glanced at her mother, then turned her gaze back to the city below. I understand, Mother, but what about David? He's the one who raised me. He's the one who's been there for me my entire life. I can't just leave him behind, Uranus. Expression softened. You don't have to choose between us, Lyra. You can still keep the bond you share with David. You can return to Earth whenever you like. But you must come back with me, at least for a while. The Empire needs you, and I need you. Lyra shook her head. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I belong, I've spent my whole life on Earth. It feels like home. I don't want to leave David, and I don't want to leave behind everything I've known. Queen Arana took a step forward, placing a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. I understand. But sometimes, our paths in life take us to places we never expected. You were meant for something greater, Lyra. I know that's not easy to accept, but it's the truth. The Taisari Empire has been waiting for you, and you are the key to its future. Lyra closed her eyes, her thoughts racing. She wanted to believe her mother. She wanted to believe that she had a purpose, that she was meant for something bigger than herself. But at the same time, she didn't want to leave the only life she had ever known. She didn't want to lose the connection she had with David, the man who had given her everything. As Lyra stood there, lost in her thoughts, David walked up behind her. He had been giving her space to think, but now it was time to talk. He placed a hand on her back, and she turned to face him. I don't want to make this decision for you, Lyra, David said, his voice filled with care. But I want you to. Know that whatever you choose, I'll support you. I know you have a place in this empire, and I know it's important. But I also know that you've always had a place with me too. Lyra looked into David's eyes, searching for the words to explain how she felt. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm being torn in two directions. I want to be with you, but I also want to see where I belong here. What if I don't? Fit in? What if I'm not ready? David smiled gently, his hand resting on her shoulder. Lyra, you've always been ready for whatever comes next. You've grown into a strong, intelligent person. You're not just the girl I raised, you're so much more. Whether you choose to stay with me or go with your mother, you'll find your way. You always do. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She had always looked up to David, and now, hearing him speak with such confidence in her, she felt a sense of peace. She knew that whatever decision she made, David would be there for her. I always had been. I need time, Lyra said softly. I need to think about it more. I can't make this decision right now, but I promise I'll make it soon. Arana nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. Take all the time you need, Lyra. We will be here, waiting for you. David smiled, his hand still on her shoulder. No matter what you choose, I'll always be proud of you. Lyra looked at both of them, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of the future. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the right choice was. But in that moment, surrounded by the two people who cared for her, she realized that she wasn't alone. Whatever path she chose, she would face it with love, strength, and the support of those who mattered most. Days passed, and Lyra continued to wrestle with her decision. The weight of the choice between staying with David, the man who had raised her, and joining her mother, Queen Arana, was becoming heavier with each moment. The more she thought about it, the more torn she felt. She was pulled between two worlds, two families, each offering something she needed, but none fully fulfilling the complex feelings in her heart. David had given her everything: love, safety, and a sense of belonging. He had been her protector, her guide, and her father in every way that mattered. But Irana, her real mother, was offering her the opportunity to reconnect with her people, to return to a world of power and heritage that she had never known. The Taisari Empire was vast and important, and Irana was more than just her mother. She was a queen with the responsibility of an entire empire on her shoulders. Lyra had the potential to be more than just a member of that empire. She could be the key to its future. One evening, Lyra stood alone in the courtyard of the palace, gazing up at the stars. The night was clear, and the twin moons above bathed the landscape in silver light. Lyra had always been fascinated by the stars, but tonight they felt different. She didn't know where she belonged anymore, not in this moment. "Do you still feel lost?" came a soft voice from behind her. Lyra turned to see David approaching, his face full of understanding. "I think I always have," Lyra said quietly, her gaze returning to the stars. "Ever since I learned I wasn't from here, I've felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I grew up with you, and I know I'm your daughter in every way that matters. But then, there's my mother and the Empire. They want me. They need me." David stepped closer and stood beside her, looking up at the stars with her. "I understand. Lyra, it's a huge choice, one I can't make for you. But I do know this: you're not alone in making it. You're not some lost child anymore. You're someone who has grown strong, someone who's made a family. And whatever choice you make, you'll still have that. We'll always have that." Lyra smiled at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. She'd been so afraid of making the wrong choice, of disappointing the one person who had always been there for her. But David's words gave her a sense of peace. It wasn't about choosing one family over the other. It was about finding a way to bring those parts of her life together. "You've always believed in me, haven't you?" Lyra said, her voice soft. "Always," David replied without hesitation. "I raised you to believe in yourself, Lyra, and I still do." Lyra's heart was full. As much as the idea of returning to the Scifi Empire called to her, she couldn't deny the life she had built with David. The love they shared, the bond they had, it was irreplaceable. Still, the Empire was part of her too, and that part of her needed to be understood. It wasn't just a role, it was her heritage. "I need to see it for myself," Lyra said, her voice clear and firm. "I need to understand what it means to be part of the Empire. But I don't want to leave you, David. I don't want to lose what we have." David nodded, his eyes full of support. "I know, Lyra, and I'll support you no matter what. Go. Learn what you need to learn. See if the Empire is the right place for you. But remember, whatever happens, you're always my daughter. That'll never change." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She knew what she had to do. She had to go back, see the Empire, understand what her mother's world was like, and then decide what role she would play in it. But David was right. She didn't have to make the decision now. She could take her time, and whatever happened, she would not lose her place with him. The next morning, Lyra met with Queen Arana in the palace's grand hall. The queen was as regal as ever, her presence commanding yet warm as she looked at her daughter. "Have you made your decision, my dear?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. "I have," Lyra said, standing tall before her mother. "I want to go back with you. I need to see the Empire, to understand my place there. But I want to do it on my terms, not because I feel forced." Queen Arana's face softened, and she smiled, her eyes glowing with pride. "I understand, Lyra. This is your journey. I have waited for this moment, but I know that you must come to it in your own way. The Empire will welcome you when you are ready." Lyra looked at her mother, then at David, who stood just behind her. She was starting to feel the excitement of what lay ahead, but also the peace of knowing she wasn't abandoning one life for another. She could balance both, embrace her heritage, while keeping the love and family she had built with David. "Thank you, Mother," Lyra said softly. "And thank you, David." David gave her a reassuring smile. "You're welcome, Lyra, no matter where you go or who you become, you will always have a place with me." With a final look back at David, Lyra followed Queen Arana to the ship that would take them to the heart of the Scifi Empire. As she stepped aboard, her heart felt lighter. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew that she was ready to take the next step in her journey, one that was hers to define. And no matter what the future held, she would always remember the love that had shaped her, the love that would never be taken away.